Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Race Bridge conversation. My name is Corey Jo Biddle, and I'm the Executive Director for Fuel Milwaukee. So Fuel is a community engagement organization for the region's professionals, and our Race Bridge program is designed to develop all of us the core competency of empathy, understanding, and other compassion around issues of race, inclusion, and equity. We're here the first Thursday of every month with a new topic, so make sure you put it on your calendar and please join us. Okay, today's programming is possible through the support and sponsorship of the Johnson Financial Group. The Johnson Financial Group's leadership and staff have been attending the Race Bridge conversations, and this is the first webinar in their support of the fall and winter series of conversations. Joining us today are Denise Delmian, Chief Human Resources Officer for Johnson Financial Group, and Mark Rose, who is the VP of Private Banking Relationship Manager and also the leader of the Employee Resource Group, Uplifting People of Color. Welcome, Denise. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to read off our DEI mission statement, and then I thought, people might zone out a little. But one of the things that I think is really important about, I think it's really good, by the way, but is that it really talks about not being judged by our intention, but by our actions. And so that's one of the reasons we're really excited to sponsor this Race Bridge series for the fall. And one of our really most important actions was instituting our employee resource groups, which is why I asked Mark to attend this with me today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and have him say a couple words.
Yes, thank you. So we are very excited I think we're making a lot of progress here at Johnson Financial Group, and the establishment of the employee resource groups has been well received and an important aspect of our reinforcing our DEI initiatives. I'm proud to be leading the group, and we've had some challenging and some really good conversations, and it's been, like I said, very well received. And I look forward to making additional progress in the future. So.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're excited to be here.
It means a lot. So Denise and Mark are going to join us for the panel, so they're going to be sticking with us. I'm excited about that. Okay, I want to acknowledge also our media sponsor, 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. 88.9 Radio Milwaukee is a catalyst for creating better, more inclusive and engaged community in Milwaukee, and they do that through music, storytelling, and general community engagement. Thanks to Radio Milwaukee for spreading the news about our programming. So now on to today's conversation. We're exploring the question, is there a shortage of diverse talent? It's been a long-held belief that the challenge of hiring diversity lies in the lack of people of color who are skilled and ready for the jobs likely to lack representation of diversity. A handful of CEOs said publicly in 2020 that this was not a myth. In fact, it was true, and that it was a challenge. There just simply isn't enough diverse talent. That comment was met with a barrage of rebuttals of people saying diverse talent is everywhere. Experts have said the data is the problem. Others have said technology is the problem. Others have said that the disconnect is in the networks, and yet others say that simply companies aren't trying hard enough. Today, we're exploring this question with a panel of folks who do this work every day. Give me the opportunity to introduce them. Hello, all. I actually am going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. I want them to see your face. Tell us, of course, your name, affiliation. Everybody's has seen it in the email, but I really want you to tell them a little bit about your work and why this particular conversation is important to you. I'm going to start with Jasmine, because Jasmine's work was part of the reason why I wanted to do this conversation. So let's start with Jasmine. We'll go around.
Well, good afternoon to each and every one of you. Thank you, Corey Joe, for the opportunity to just be a participant on this very important topic. And anytime I can grace the virtual stage with a friend from elementary's middle school since third grade, it's always great to be in your presence, Corey Joe. Jasmine Johnson. I am Vice President of Sales at iHeartMedia, but the work specifically that Corey Joe is referring to is a reimagined initiative called We Exist. A little over 6 years ago, we started with 4 corporate partners and really focused on the African American ERG model here within the region. And over 5.5 years, it grew from 4 corporate partners to 18. And one of the things that we did on a quarterly basis was being able to convene. And, this group being able to bring professionals of color together, specifically African American at the time, it was just great to connect in person. A lot of corporate partners use it as an opportunity to bring their new hires to actually folks would articulate that they would go weeks or months and not see anybody that looks like them. And this was a way to put them in the room and in the space. And then ultimately, when several corporations were, being acquired or merging, and they were taking, roles outside of the region, because those people had been coming on a quarterly basis, they were, we were able to cross-pollinate and retain the diverse talent here within the Milwaukee region. COVID happened. That changed the lives of every single person. And so we needed to find a way to still be connected to one another. Many African-American professionals were juggling the loss of several family members, friends who lost loved ones, and their parents, on top of the national unrest, and trying to unpack that and then talk to your children and then Zoom into your job and be able to function and show up. So we launched a Wellness Check Wednesday series that created a very safe space for professionals of color, specifically African Americans and allies, and what I love to say, also accomplices, to just be able to be. But from that, we were having conversations and looking at where to go. And that's how the We Exist model came, taking it away just from an African American focus and aligning with the region of choice to focus on African American, Hispanic, Latinx, and I added Southeast Asian through the counsel of our great friend Mainza Tao, but really being a catalyst. And through the virtual series of We Exist, we were able to help dispel the myth. We connected with over 1,100 professionals of color. 37% hold a bachelor's degree, 43 have a master's, and 8% had a doctorate level degree. So showing the data that those are professionals right here who are primed and ready for the next opportunity. And We Exist, if you haven't picked up or seen the edition of the Milwaukee Business Journal from September 17th, in a few weeks, there'll be another spread. In addition to building the digital community, where you can think of like a localized LinkedIn, taking the pipeline of talent, because we were able to curate and harness the talent and connect them to the opportunities. So I would encourage everyone to just take a moment to visit weexist.community. That will get you to that digital community. But being able to leverage the platform that I'm blessed to be on with it, which is mass media, using that opportunity to partner with Kira LaFawn over at the Milwaukee Business Journal. And that quote that you gave as I'm wrapping up, Corey Joe, that's actually how We Exist sparked, and we transitioned away from the ERG model and broadened it to professionals of color. Was when that Wells Fargo CEO made that comment, I was like, I want your C-suite leaders that are subscribed to the Business Journal every so often to open up a 2-page spread and see nothing but Black, brown professionals of color that are right here across a vast amount of industries. And so here you are. So being able to birth that and partner and collaborate with several corporations here, that's how we got here, to be able to be a bridge builder and incentivize and promote people. So we have partners such as Fuel Milwaukee, and being able to gamify that digital community. So when people come to the race bridge, they'll be able to get tokens and exchange those tokens. So again, connectivity and bringing people together, and ultimately eliminate the excuses and showing them that diverse talent exists and putting them right there. So thank you again, Corey. And that is why I'm passionate about this work in space and what We Exist is and how it came to be.
Yeah, that's what the graphic I put up was the first of several of the two-page spreads that you'll see in the business journal. I'm going to skip around to Manuel. How about you?
So Corey, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. And I truly, for me, truly an honor to be part of this panel and this conversation today. So a brief introduction, Manuel Ferrer Herrera. I moved to the Milwaukee area years ago in 2002 to initiate my career as an engineer at GE Healthcare. And I lived in that area for almost 20 years. And it was not until recently that I moved to the Phoenix, Arizona area to pursue a unique career opportunity that has helped me continue my growth and my ambitions. Now, that's a connection, right, between me and Milwaukee and now let's talk about the connection with this conversation. So through all this journey, I have been blessed with the number of mentors. Some of you in this conversation are part of that mentorship group that I have, and people that truly believed in me. And my why, my purpose is to be that person for others, especially those professionals that are starting their careers and they look like us. They're brown, black, they are underrepresented. I feel a responsibility to help those individuals advance and achieve much faster than I could by sharing what I have learned. And that is my why. So that I am an advocate for those that are underrepresented. And I concur with Jasmine. I have a fairly vast network in the Milwaukee area of very prepared, educated, professional people that are brown, black, and from either even more ethnicity representations. And I think they're ready for the opportunity. And I hope that through this conversation, we get to discover how we can help those individuals identify those opportunities and help them prepare to compete properly for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bridget.
Good afternoon. I'm Bridget Borum. I'm currently the Talent Acquisition, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director for Advocate Aurora. And what that means is that my focus is on staff level talent and ensuring that we embed diversity, equity, inclusion practices and procedures and everything that we do to attract, identify, select, hire, and onboard talent. And I'd like to share, as Manuel did, I've been very fortunate in career in that every job that I've had has been through the network. I knew someone who worked somewhere who took my resume in or dropped my name with a hiring manager. And of course I had to interview and make the cut. But when I reflect, I somewhat was insulated to the fact that there was an issue with talent that was diverse. And so as I moved into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space and began to do some of this work and learn about the challenges that are both on the talent side as well as the employer side, it just really started to stir things in me to make me start to think, what's really happening? Are we talking to one another? Where's the real disconnect? And so when Corey Joe reached out to me, I thought, oh, okay, now here's an opportunity to talk about this. I do think it's a complex issue with many, many different challenges. And I think both sides of this discussion need to be present and available to resolve this issue. And so that's what I'm here for today, to listen, learn, and share as I take what I'm learning here back so that I continue to do this work at Advocate Aurora.
Thank you, Bridget. Another recruiter, Anne.
Perfect. I am Ann Curtis. I'm a senior recruiter at Tyson Foods. I have the privilege on a regular basis to connect professionals to opportunities within the Tyson organization. I work primarily with our prepared foods arm of the organization. So a lot of marketing, project management, training positions, corporate roles within the organization, but obviously have the breadth of about 140,000 people within the organization. So always looking to hire first and foremost, and to be able to build up our diverse population. We know that diverse groups drive the bottom line for business. That is important as we continue to move into a more ambiguous world, right? Where we need great problem solvers who can come forward and work together to find the best way, in our case, to get food on people's tables and into the grocery stores, but also to work together to move the industry forward. So it is a privilege and an honor to be a part of this group, and I am here as much to learn as to share whatever perspective I might be able to. So thanks, Corey Jo, appreciate it.
Jonathan, it's on you.
Corey Jo, thanks for the opportunity. Excited to be here with my fellow panelists. I'm with Milwaukee Area Tech College. I'm an educator, and I think really what I think about on a daily basis, and what we think about on a daily basis, is making sure that we've got folks coming out of the education system with the skills they need for everyone else to hire them effectively. We want to make sure that everybody's trained up and ready to go. And two hats that I wear in particular at MATC, I think fit this actually really well. On the one side, I work with students in high school who are trying to figure out what it is that they want to do, and maybe start that process while they're in high school, start higher ed while they're in high school. And then I look at things on the other side as well, students getting finished with MATC, wanting to go on and get baccalaureate degrees. And I'm passionate about both of those spaces because, you know, we've even heard just in these opening comments here, we've got talent in and around the city, and I'm never going to deny that we've got it, and we need to tap into it. But what I'll also say is what I see from where I sit is that we could have more of it. There are equity gaps in educational attainment, and I'm trying every day, and MATC is trying every day to close those gaps and afford, in my case, young folks the opportunity to ladder up their education in as expeditious a way as possible. So excited to be here. Happy to be a part of this conversation.
Glad to have you here. Well, Denise, excuse me, Denise and Mark, the group met you already, but just tell us a little bit about why you're passionate about the work that you're doing and how it connects to this conversation in particular.
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, if you would like to kick it off, I'll.
Okay. So, you know, I think this is a great conversation to have, and there's so many different angles that you can come at it from. And I love what Jonathan said here about education and closing that gap. And you know, we all need to get better at this. And so I'm interested in participating, and thank you for having me be a panelist. And I love what I think it was Ann said about, you know, learning from each other as well. And I think, you know, you have to be vulnerable to understand where your opportunities are. And we have some of those here. So, you know, I think we all need to continue to listen and learn and figure out what we can do to make sure that we're addressing the diversity and inclusion in our organization. So excited to really participate and continue on this journey.
So glad to have you here, Mark.
So, I mean, as Denise mentioned, there's so many ways to look at this and to attack it, but, you know, I see it as, you know, there's a lot of diverse talent here in our city, but unfortunately what we see is people, you know, get their education here and then they end up leaving because they don't see the opportunities with companies. No one's reaching out to them to say, you know, through internships or just by being a mentor. We're not seeing that kind of outreach. And I think, you know, if we could do a better job of doing that as professionals, I think we'd have a lot better chance to retain the diverse talent that we have here within the city. I'm born and raised here in Milwaukee. I've been in the financial services industry for almost 29 years, and I've seen a lot, as Corey and I were talking before this broadcast. I've seen a lot in those number of years, but I think a couple of things we need to look at internally as well within our own companies, and have some sort of mechanism where people, such as a employee resource group, where people can express concerns, express things that they're interested in. Maybe they're not comfortable going directly to their manager, so they need kind of an opportunity, a forum to be able to express what they're interested in. So we need to do a better job of looking at what we already have within our companies and raising those people up, uplifting those people. And then the other side, looking outside of our company and bringing in the youth, getting them exposed to different industries. I think that's all an important aspect of it. And as we know, it's about education, but it's also about kind of that knowledge outside of the educational arena, and how to network and how to connect with others. Like Bridget said, and like Manny said, it's about us taking the initiatives ourselves as well. I mean, we were able to get to where we are today because we did have some connections, but we maybe had some ways of being proactive and connecting with other people, letting people know what we wanted to do. And it doesn't always come immediately, but just sometimes planting that seed goes a long way. But I think I see myself, I'm not directly in HR, but I do see myself as someone that can hopefully, with my experience, be able to mentor someone or give someone some advice on kind of next steps in their career, which hopefully is moving up within our own company. But sometimes that might be going outside, going into a different industry. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, Mark, that's the space most of the participants, people who are going to watch the replay, people on Facebook are in that same space. They're either managing people and they have some influence over who gets hired, or they have their own experiences and kind of can help people guide their path to wherever they want to go in the career. I remember in 2020 when this became a huge issue because of the, that fireside chat and the CEO's comment. Before that time, I believed this idea without question that there was a shortage of people of color, if not everywhere, in some industries. They just aren't there. When I started to do the research going after that and even preparing for this, it's not unquestioned. I mean, every time in every industry, when that question comes up of diversity and talent and hiring and recruiting, there are always two sides of that argument. And there's always somebody saying, nope, you're looking at it the wrong way. Nope, you got to think about it differently. Nope, talent comes in all kinds of forms. That's why I really wanted to have this conversation, so we could really dig down into the issue, because like Bridget said, it is obviously a complex issue. But if we just believe, like I did, that there's this shortage of talent, that's your default go-to, and you won't get creative about your requirements or hiring or your networks or any of that. So as we start to get into the conversation, I want to remind the participants, feel free to leave comments in the chat. I have let the panelists know that you will be talking to them and they will respond to you. I've seen a little bit of that already. And if you have a question that you want to submit anonymously, do that in the Q&A just to get your fingers warmed up. And I'm going to ask all the panelists and everybody in the chat a question. I'm going to give you 3 choices. My question is there a shortage of diverse talent? And your responses can be yes, no, or it depends. Go to the chat right now. Yes, no, or it depends. Okay, they're coming in. Come on in. All right, now I'm gonna hit the panelists with it. Denise, yes, no, it depends.
I don't think there is.
Okay, Jonathan.
It depends.
Manuel,
I don't think there is.
Mark,
Depends.
Jasmine.
No.
Well, why am I surprised? Bridget.
It depends.
Okay. Anne.
It depends.
Okay. It depends. What does it depend on?
Industry
Let's pick one thread and start pulling it.
So I'll jump in with it depends. I think there are roles that are very niche, where there's just hard to find talent in general. But what I see happens in a lot of occurrences is that we have a role and we have diverse talent, but maybe we need to work more internally to strengthen our teams around hiring diverse talent. Or maybe there's, during that interview process or doing some of the selection process, maybe the talent is missing one thing or another. So that just is, anything that can disqualify talent is kind of exaggerated. And so just addressing some of those challenges with being receptive and inclusive to hiring diverse talent, and then making sure that, if it's a general role, I think, yeah, it's easy to find diverse talent. But if it's a real niche role, it is challenging to find diverse talent. But in that instance, it's difficult to find talent in general. And I think that's the current environment is. It's just challenging to find talent in general right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, if I can jump in, I think sometimes it's hard to get managers and people to look past having the exact qualifications they have in mind. And sometimes they're not interested unless they have somebody who exactly fits what they're looking for. And that's difficult in all cases. But I think that sometimes is part of the challenges. If somebody doesn't have the exact right qualifications or background, they just knock them out. And I think in order to really strengthen our diversity, we need to open that up and not be so specific, and realize that sometimes you do have to give people on the job training to get them prepared and able to do the job. So, and I think that is especially true with diverse talent.
And I wholeheartedly agree. I would just say that then my hopes in those conversations where we have people like Bridget and or accomplices to correct them and not just put it on the lack of diverse talent for that niche role and push back and say it's just the shortage of talent. I'm a data person, so while I do understand that, there is a major educational gap here in this region, I point to the nearly 2,000 people of which 37% have a bachelor's, 43% of that group have a master's, and 8% have a doctoral level degree. I point to the fact that there are over 200 En-ROADS alums in this region, and En-ROADS specifically developing people of color in IT, finance, and engineering. So I do think that the answer to me is no, there is no shortage of diverse talent, but prefacing it when it comes to those niche roles, that to be able to say it's not a shortage of diverse talent, but pushing back appropriately. And understanding also that there is a continuous brain drain. I mean, Corey, Joe, myself, Janine, Danielle on the line, for like the last 15 years, we're kind of beating that drum, long before, where we were seeing our own personal network. I think, Corey, Joe, we had calculated about a decade ago that in our personal circle, we had lost over $1 million of household income for individuals who had left, not just the city, but the state. And as a person who as a Milwaukee native who've left this market twice and come back for a job, I understand the brain drain, but it comes also not just to making for sure that people are welcome inside their corporate walls, but the reaction and the reception that they feel when they go to, the university club and the stop and stares, or you walk into other spaces where people aren't quite, like, how did they get in here? It's all of those little subtle things that I think plays a role into the retention of diverse talent and or the willingness to want to talk this city up. But when you have initiatives like the Race Bridge here to continue to foster safe places for people to just build and be the digital community, of course, like we exist, those are the opportunities to really foster what that holistic approach is to what it takes to recruit and retain diverse professionals. And then it takes, you know, ancillary companies like the Johnson Financial Group. I was very happy to see that they were partnering in this. I didn't know that this was their very first one. So it was just, you know, the irony, or I don't believe really in coincidences, but I remember being 15 years old and both of my parents being college educated, my father a graduate of MSOE and my mother holding multiple degrees, and they wanted to build a home. And there was a financial institution where the lender looked at them and said, I'm not interested in lending to you. I don't think you should have a house like this. But having a Johnson Financial Group who recognized that their money was also green and being able to welcome, those are the experiences, right? That I remember as a teenage girl looking at the face and heartbreak on my parents' face when they were like dealing with that other financial institution, but having an entity like Johnson Financial Group, who when they walked in, treated them like a person and treated them as a human. So the last thing I would just say is even when employers and recruiters, and you're having those internal conversations about D&I, DE&I, however you wanna do your acronyms, I think it comes down to a heart issue. Mm-hmm. It is not a head issue. It's a simple decision. I'm a very black and white. I don't do gray. I don't do, you know, all the, it's simple. It's either a yes or a no. Do you want to do this or do you not? And just with any other business decision, when people have to report to their shareholders, they don't try to figure it out. They don't work on it for years and months on end. It's a decision. I think it comes down to a heart decision in the culture of that organization.
Jonathan, you come at this from a perspective of like actually working with students that are about to go into the workforce. It depends. Why? What are you seeing? What's been your experience?
Yeah, so you know what Bridget is talking about in terms of niche stuff. You can see disparity gaps there, but I think maybe the way that I'll say it is this, and I might be a little more direct in touching a nerve on this whole conversation. You know, to me, it's bothersome, heartbreaking, angering. There's a lot of emotions that I could throw out when you hear these, and let's talk about internal to companies. When you hear this difference in dialogue that directly slides across race lines, will promote you. Now go get the education you need to grow in, versus go get the education you need, then we'll promote you. And that difference you can totally see slide across race lines. And you hear this as educators, we hear these kinds of things. I mean, this is not what students necessarily tell us immediately on day one, but through conversation, you hear these kinds of things. Simply because, you know, some students are saying, yeah, I'm doing this to get thee. And some other students will say, I'm doing this education because I got thee, and now I have to. And you hear those differences. And I think that I love what is being said here. We have to check ourselves internally. How are we looking at promoting from within? How are we looking at hiring from without? And do we bring those, I guess, subtly projected biases into the work that we do every day? But looking at it from, you know, through the lens of like young folks, you can look across the nation at just like raw data. National Center for Ed Statistics will talk about associate degree and higher earning across the nation. There's a 15% gap between African American and white. It just across the nation, there is a percentage difference of students earning degrees, or of people earning degrees of any level and of any kind. We need to fix this. And I think that we're trying to do work every day. I'm trying to watch both the chat and the Q&A as it's running while we're talking. And people are putting these comments in here. We need to be proactively doing this work so that this gap doesn't exist. To me, and I think to almost any educator, it's ridiculous that it does. It doesn't need to exist. And that's the thing that really drives me every day is to close that gap, because somebody put this into the chat. We're all humans, right? Just the idea that Jasmine said, right? Everybody's money's green. Why should there be education gaps? It defies logic to me, and I think to all educators it does.
Thanks, Jonathan. Mark?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure I'm not on mute. It looks like I'm not. So, John, I'm glad you brought up race. This is called Race Bridge. And that is a big factor in, I think, the opportunities and how individuals are viewed for those various opportunities, as far as who's getting tapped on the shoulder to say, you should look at this opportunity, or I know that you're not fully qualified, but because maybe somebody knows someone in a different area or something, they're getting an opportunity. And I can go on and on about that. The wealth gap in the country, how was that created? Opportunities, internal, external opportunities, education. I can go on and on, but I think you have to take a look in the mirror. Companies have to take a look in the mirror and say, where are we today? Where do we want to be tomorrow? And how do we, I think as John mentioned, how do we close that gap? What do we need to do? And as Jasmine mentioned, it's about that heart, right? It's about, giving someone an opportunity, encouraging someone. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes down, to race. If you have two candidates, someone that's diverse and someone that's white, maybe same credentials, same education, sometimes more than sometimes that person, that non-diverse candidate, that non-person of color is not getting the opportunity, and maybe they're not getting the encouragement to look at internal and external opportunities. So what can we do about that? I think we all have a responsibility. If we see something that doesn't make sense, you got to have those difficult conversations sometimes, and it's just have to do it. And so sometimes it's not all about what you bring to the table individually. It's about the opportunities that are out there, and it's not necessarily about if you work hard enough, you can do anything. Unfortunately, that's not the case in a lot of cases. So, and it's about the youth too, training and educating our youth, being positive role models for our youth. They want to see people like us that are doing things that are, being successful. And it's not about achieving a certain level of success and saying, hey, I did this on my own. And it's about reaching back. It's about encouraging. It's about trying to help others. Hopefully not take 29 years, to get to a certain level, but, maybe have a little jump start because I can maybe encourage someone or give someone some information or a connection that they may not have otherwise had, or maybe a recommendation. So yeah, there's a lot. We could talk for a long time about this subject, but
yeah, Manny, I want to come to you because I know you work in an industry that is often said there's just not, the skills are just not there, but you will know closer in the industry what people's real experience is. This reminds me of one of the first conversations that we had about bias, and about how the threat of it just affects everything that we do every day. And a lot of times this particular topic is, it's about the pipeline and it's about data. And I read so many articles and studies about the talent that became talented and skilled in diverse ways. You know, we think about diverse talent in terms of culture and background, but we've all collected experiences. We all know how to do stuff based on things we've done in our lives. Sometimes it comes through college. I just figured it out myself. I got on the computer and I taught myself. There's lots of different ways to acquire information, but sometimes people of color don't get the shot to leverage that because their managers or the people they work with are overlooked. There's a bias there. There's a, you know, it kind of all goes back to the heart issue. Yes, this is data. You know, yes, we got to look at schools, but all of us have to think about, are we overlooking people of color because we don't relate to them, they're not in our network, or we don't value the way that they came about their knowledge and experience. Manuel?
So look, listening to the conversation, I have a few ideas that I think are good to share. What can we do? Mark just asked that question. Look, if we are, or if you are in a position of power, become a mentor. And through that mentorship relationship, which I view is a two-way street, you can learn as much as your mentee can learn from you. Become a sponsor. When those opportunities appear, find a way to showcase that mentor, or excuse me, that mentee that you have been working with, and help that person compete for that opportunity. Also, I think it's extremely powerful when organizations and companies hire, promote, position people that look like the diversity they would like to have. One of my privileges when I was working at GE Healthcare was participating as a recruiter and a representative of our company at different universities and at different, I will say, activities that were focused to attract diverse talents. And first, as I mentioned, when Manuel showed up and Manuel looked brown, just like the people attending, they wanted to speak with me because there was an affinity. And the recruiting process is tough, right? It's an interview where we were going after the best of the best, but that relationship progressed to become a mentor for those recruits so they could be successful and navigate the process of joining the company. And those mentorship relationships became friendships. And it takes a lot of time, and Anne can probably speak to it, and that's what you do on a daily basis. Recruiting is a lot of work. Those are things that we can do. And I heard Jasmine and some others mention employee resource groups, ERGs. Part of the acronym soup, I understand that, but I was part of the ERG at GE Healthcare for years. I was part of the leadership team in the ERG. And in fact, we learned how to combine forces between different ERGs within the company. And because we, in some cases, had the same purpose, the same goal, and combining those efforts, we were able to go outside locally in the city, local universities, MSOE, Marquette University, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, as well as outside of Wisconsin, to look and speak with those underrepresented talent that they're hungry for an opportunity, and they wanted to have confirmation that yes, they are enough. You have, or they have, the requisites, the education, the experience to compete for the positions, and we help them navigate the process to obtain that position. And it's extremely rewarding to be part of that. And I am not with GE Healthcare anymore. And while GE Healthcare has been the place where I have developed my career, I have worked with other companies. Today, I work at a different company in Phoenix, Regenesis Biomedical, also in the medical devices and healthcare space. And I accepted. I was looking for my next opportunity. I couldn't find it in my local area, and I looked for it. I interviewed, I spoke with numerous people, In some cases, I thought I was this close to get the job. I didn't get it. And someone recruited me for this opportunity. I do miss Wisconsin, Milwaukee. I spent there 20 years. I am still connected with those mentees, regardless of where they are. But that is some examples, some ideas of things that we can all do. Become a mentor and become a sponsor.
In
And
the
if I could just
chat,
add, I'm sorry,
right before
about-
you, go ahead, Jasmine, go ahead.
Just real quick about the BRG or ERG model. That was one of the reasons, even though that's how we were set up, connecting the 18 different African-American BRGs for nearly 6 years. That was another reason why we went away from that model for 2 reasons. One, because there are individuals on contracts that are sitting in these corporate spaces, but because they're on contract, they can't access the ice cream social, they can't do the resources for the BRG or ERG. So there was like hundreds of people through the quarantine, COVID, that were not being able to connect. So that was another reason. And personally, this is a Jasmine Johnson comment, not affiliated with anyone else. My dream is to not have a need for a business resource group or ERG. And that may be controversial, but Jonathan said we was going to be talking about some things and being straight shooters. If a culture of a company was what it's supposed to be and everyone had a sense of belonging, you would need to have all the different subsets and subgroups because everyone would be included. And I will say, I've had more success at companies whose cultures to focus on inclusivity versus the check in the box and, oh, you got multiple that you can help us with being a Black female. And when people are focused on just checking diversity boxes versus focusing on the inclusivity of background, to Corey Joe's point, experiences and the diversity that comes from that, I just wish there would be a day when we wouldn't need BRGs and ERGs and the culture speaks for itself.
How many people in the chat, just quickly, I want you to, in the chat, say, if you know somebody right now in the Milwaukee region who is of color and is either looking for a job or trying to get promoted and express frustration to you that it's not happening. Leave a comment in the chat, just let us see.
Can you say the last part one more time, Corey Joe? I'm sorry.
Folks who are saying, I'm a person of color, I'm out here, I'm looking for a job or I'm trying to get promoted and it's just not happening for me. Are you seeing that? Well, I'm seeing a bunch of yeses, right? And if you're not, you say everybody in my network is good. They all, somebody said not currently, it's a good blend. Okay, so I want to get a perspective from the HR folks, Denise and Bridget. How hard is it to change the way that companies look at people's talent or hiring, the requirements, when we read so much about it's the technology that's stopping people and people, it's the hiring qualifications. This is a challenge that can be changed. How true is it? Is this stuff that can be switched up a little bit?
Well, I do think that, is it a challenge? I mean, look, it's about communication, and communication is always a challenge, I think, no matter what, where you are. But I do think it's up to, as a member of the C-suite, it's up to the C-suite to recognize that there are opportunities and that we need to find ways to get at them. And so, one of the things that we're trying to do here is that we heard this comment about, I've been interested and I haven't had the opportunity. And so we're in the process now of building something where we have people tell us what their interest level is, right? Because we haven't actually been capturing that. And so then we have that available to us as human resource professionals to have that as, a resource to reflect on when we have an opportunity and say, hey, I know so-and-so's interested in this. Have we talked with them? What are we doing? And what are we doing to get them ready? If they don't have all the skills today, if you're saying they're missing some of these skills, what are we doing to help get them ready? And so I think that you can't just leave it up to managers. It has to be at a company level where you're really building in these processes to what you're doing so that you can, I love what Jasmine said. I too think it would be great if there wasn't a need for employee resource groups, although it has been really helpful to hear that feedback and for people to have the opportunity to deliver that feedback and give us ideas, because sometimes we're coming at it from a different view. And I love getting that view of things that, you know, I'm not familiar with or I haven't experienced. And so, but anyway, I think that it has to start at the top, and it has to be about, okay, we recognize that there are opportunities, and what are we doing to build programs around some of these so that then it's not just left up to chance.
No, and I feel like we have the opportunity as well. I think it does need to be led absolutely by the leadership, by the executive team, to say, we believe in this, this is important, this is why we see it's going to drive our business forward. And then for each individual within the organization, one of the things that I have the opportunity to do from my perspective is to talk to each individual hiring manager as an advisor and talk about those qualifications. Do you actually need a bachelor's? Do you need 5 years in this very specific niche area or this very specific skill set? Can we broaden this out? Can we talk about other backgrounds that would be a great crossover? Because there are a good amount of positions that really could benefit from a different perspective, whether it's somebody coming from a different industry or a different background, to come in and bring, frankly, new and fresh ideas.
So I would echo those same sentiments that it's not gonna have, we're not gonna have success without the leadership buy-in. I think that's automatic. You gotta have leadership buy-in. I would add, you also have to have a culture that is inclusive, as Jasmine alluded to earlier. You really have to have a culture that's inclusive, and changing culture is a big thing. It takes a long time to change culture. And I'll go back to, it's a complex issue because we also have to think about the structures that are in place, the practices that are in place. How do we move away from those practices and those norms? This is how we always did it. How do we move beyond that when we have a really large organization, and then holding folks accountable for making those moves? And so it just becomes really challenging. It's not impossible, but it's not, we're not going to turn a switch on and say we've got that solved. It's going to take time, dedication, and concentration on all of these areas that we find to be really complex. And so I think you need that leadership buy-in. I totally agree with that. But those folks who have the power, right, they've got to share that power and say, we're going to allow diverse talent into the organization. We're going to take off our blinders. We're going to see things a different way. We're going to promote this person or move this person through the organization who may not look like me, sound like me, may not drive to work like me, but are still able to get the work done. And if we focus on performance, that, you know, would really be a great equalizer versus, you know, what a person looks like or sounds like, or their name or anything else that may drive our differences. Are they able to perform the work, the tasks that we have to get done in the organization?
One thing that, as we wrap up here, participants should encourage their employers to do to increase diversity, inclusion, wherever you want to go with it in companies, because it's layered, right? If somebody asked a good question in the chat and said, if you hire, you know, you have all these diverse hires, but your culture isn't right, they're going to leave anyway. So you got to do both. So let's end it on that note. We got to do both. So if people can do, companies can focus on one thing, can you give any advice on what you think that one thing should be? And I'll start with Manuel, since he's unmuted.
Look, I want to use the example of the company that I joined. recently. So my coworkers, the senior executive staff, they almost all look the same. I am the one that stands out because I have an accent. I am brown. I come from somewhere else. They took a bold move to hire me. And look, the interview process took almost 2 months. I have never interviewed for 2 months. And it was extremely exhausting. It was tiring. However, I feel I have a duty to go through that process so I can show others how to do it and that it can be done. Now, it doesn't end there. I have been able to influence the CEO of the company, the board of directors, and I'm trying to explain it in a way they can understand. For example, I like to talk about our customers. And I like to highlight, look, our customers, they look so different from us. How can we understand what do they need if we are only know this much, which is our life experience, our expectations, our biases? And that has really helped to ignite a lot of conversations about inclusion and diversity. And that's what I was referring to in my previous comment. Look, I have earned this position of power, and I'm using that power not for glamour, but rather to make a change that can benefit many, and really pave that path so others can walk it a lot faster, a lot smoother.
My one thing is pay equity. While I love the metrics that the region of choice and the leadership of the MMAC has done to elevate this in this conversation, you know, as a Black woman, according to the national data, it takes me to the 3rd week of August what my white male counterpart made the previous December 31st, and he's coming up on that, you know, recently restoring a historic home in Harambe. And I know my dollar is now probably 27 cents less than it was in Caledonia, Wisconsin. Pay equity. I feel that, you know, people who are performing and excelling in these roles should be paid the same in the same amount as their white peers. It gets closer to the generational wealth building and minimizes that gap.
As I'm reading all these comments in the chat, and they're going pretty quick, and I'm thinking about what a lot of people are saying, I think my one thing is, until we get to what Jasmine described, where we don't need these things because companies just function the way that we all look at each other as humans, which we should be doing. Until we get to that, my one thing is for employers to look in the mirror and recognize that there is a circle and there is a way in it, and there are people who aren't in it, and ask the question, does the circle have to be the way that it is? I'm looking at, because it's a barrier effectively, I'm looking at all of these comments in the chat. Resume screening software. Does it have to screen out people who haven't had the mentoring necessary to understand how that screening works and change their resume? Or do they bring just as much talent to the job, but it's simply an algorithm that keeps them out because they don't understand how the algorithm works? It's something so simple, but a company looking in the mirror saying, do we have to operate this way? And so many other comments that have been made here, but I think that would be mine. Understand that there is a circle, whether it's blatant or not, and it serves as a wall. And does it really need to be there?
Also say that it, you know, having a caring culture is good and great, and that's everything we should want. But I think you also have to have an aware culture. And you know, one of the things that I feel like Johnson Financial Group has always been known to be a very caring organization, but you know, I think we still have opportunities in awareness, and so, you know, recognizing those and addressing those, I think, is important.
I think my thing is constantly reflecting on that inclusion piece and making sure that we are reflecting, again, the needs and the interests of our employees, and asking them, how they want to bring themselves to the work that they do. Do they feel included? Do they feel a part of the culture? Because if they don't, then yes, we risk losing them and recreating the cycle. So keep them included.
I'll just jump in. I think I'm one of the last ones here. Going beyond welcoming, opening the doors to say, hey, I'm checking these boxes. I'm letting this person in. Going beyond that, making them feel like they belong there, and taking a chance on people, people of color, to give them opportunities. So that's my point.
Just one thing. Well, I'll tell you, I had the last race bridge we had, in the comments, the participants called me out. So we need more white men on the panel. Why are you leaving the white dudes out of the conversation? And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. So reached out to MATC, and Carol Voss responded to me, and I said, I need a good white man that can really get on these numbers and really give it to us. And she connected me with Jonathan, and let me see. I'll say diversity is very, very important. It's critical. Don't leave anybody out. Thank you, Jonathan, Denise, Manuel, Mark, Jasmine, Bridget, and Ann. Every one of you represented and gave us so much to think about in this conversation. I hope all of you that are still with us, the attendees, got a lot of food for thought, and we'll go back and have these conversations in your companies internally. And these are conversations changing my life too. It's not just the way I look at the world of work, it's the way I interact with people every day. I want to be very competent as a leader at work when it comes to inclusion, but I really want to live my life the exact way that we encourage people to on this and other platforms. So thank you to all of the participants and all of the panelists. Thanks for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey Jo.
Yeah, thank you.
We went a little bit over, but you're only going to be 5 minutes late to your 3 o'clock. So
Thank you.
thank you all.